All right. 10 to 12 minutes, Dolma, and then Q&A.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Dolma Tsundu, and I'm the CEO and founder of Flutter. We're building wearable tech to monitor fetal health remotely. I'd like to introduce you to my friend, Nadine. For 15 years, Nadine was a policy analyst with the Government of Canada, and she loved being able to contribute to her community as a public servant. Nadine and her husband were really excited to learn that they were expecting a baby girl, Judith. Judith was full of energy, a little kickboxer inside of Nadine's belly. But just 2 weeks before her due date, Nadine noticed Judith's movements becoming less frequent and weaker. So she went to her doctor, who took Judith's heartbeat, told her that babies just run out of room, and sent her back home. Just 2 days later, little Judith's heart stopped beating, and Nadine's world changed forever. On September 18th, Nadine held her daughter for both the first and the last time. The guilt and grief she experienced after her stillbirth was debilitating. She was hospitalized for PTSD and depression, and to this day has been unable to return to work. Nadine's story is not uncommon. Every 16 seconds, a baby around the world is stillborn. And in high-income countries like Canada and the US, 30% of these deaths could be prevented. And stillbirths also put mothers at risk, with a significantly higher chance of experiencing severe complications during their delivery. With only sporadic checkups, parents are on their own to recognize when something is wrong. In Nadine's case, she did everything right. She took care of her health, listened to her body, and took action when she felt something was wrong. But she had an undiagnosed maternal infection that was cutting off little Judith's oxygen. Stillbirths are also costly, with a direct cost of $9,000 per stillbirth. And we know that pregnancy in general is quite expensive, with $19,000 per pregnancy, and this cost rising to $27,000 per complex pregnancy. So at Flutter, we're enabling parents and providers to offer the best care for them through the development of a non-invasive wearable device that allows parents and physicians to continuously monitor maternal and fetal health from home. So we've developed a new method of fetal imaging that allows parents to track fetal movements, which is one of the most established and important indicators of fetal well-being. Currently, parents are still manually tracking their fetal movements. So our technology helps to increase compliance, decrease anxiety, and will provide access to data that will fundamentally change how we understand stillbirths. Current technologies are really only focused on fetal heart rate, which can be misleading, and you have to be properly trained to understand that data, whereas our technology is helping families to predict this distress faster through fetal movements and heart rate technology. On the left, you'll see a comparable device from Nuvo. As you can see, it's very bulky and not discreet, whereas our technology is integrated into garments that mothers are already wearing during pregnancy, and this will allow for smoother adoption. But beyond this, we're also changing the way in which people experience and remember pregnancy. And just one example is our butterfly visualizations. We've built defensible technologies with our patents pending. Our device is at TRL 7 and has been approved to be used with humans in studies through our safety approvals. Just this past week, we were able to test our device with our first 2 human participants. And we've been able to also be supported by key deep technology programs such as the Hardware Catalyst Initiative, where we're accessing an $11 million prototyping lab for free, and that's where our R&D is conducted out of. We've also been backed by Techstars Industries of the Future, which was Techstars' only program that was partnered with a scientific laboratory. And then we are also backed by the National Research Council, who has been supporting our R&D efforts. Our wearable device will be available in 2027, but before then, we will have our Kick Counter app, which is a standalone app. And this app is already in market. It allows families to manually track their fetal movements, whereas our wearable device makes tracking fetal movements even easier because it automates this process. This technology has been used by over 6,000 families across more than 140 countries, demonstrating the potential for the wearable to do well because it makes the process easier. And then we also have been able to have our app promoted by key health authorities, such as the Washington State Department of Health. And we've also been promoted by the International Stillbirth Alliance. And we've been collaborating with the Public Health Agency of Canada through the Canadian Collaborative for Stillbirth Prevention, working towards a national strategy to prevent stillbirths in Canada. So in terms of our revenue model, our device will be available at a unit cost of $2,000, and that's with an 85% gross margin. But our consumer app is currently free, but we will move towards a subscription model of $5.99 per month. And we expect a 5-month usage per user. So that's 1 month before the 3rd trimester and then 1 month postpartum. And so our focus is on the 2 million complex pregnancies that occur each year across Canada, the US, and the UK, which represents a beachhead market of $4 billion per year. So we'll launch our app as a D2C. That's how it currently is being accessed right now. And then we'll move towards our B2C channels through our consumer purchase of our wearable device, such as through pharmacies and consumer electronic stores. And then in the future, we expect to have more of a B2B2C channel through insurance reimbursements once we are able to set up a code that's specific to our device, as well as being available through employee benefits plans. So far, we've already been able to establish some of these channels. As an example, advocacy groups have been promoting our app, and we've also been able to successfully reach users through social media. As just one example, we've had our TikTok videos go viral, reaching over 200,000 views per video and converting to thousands of downloads per video. But in the future, we will be looking at larger channels such as through the health authorities and professional organizations, which are more of these trusted channels that can enable us to reach a lot more families and users. So we are a Class 2 de novo device. Our goal is to get to our full regulatory submissions by the 2nd quarter of 2026. We're currently conducting our first in-human study, and we will aim to have our pivotal study completed by the 4th quarter of 2025. And in the past quarter, we were able to secure our safety testing and ethics approval. And we're also already receiving interest from different clinical institutions. So for example, we've received interest from the University of Tennessee Medical Center, which was recently ranked as one of the top maternity hospitals in the US. And we're also participating in the Healthy program with St. Joseph's Hospital in Hamilton. So far, we've kept our team very lean and really focused on the skills that are required to build our technology. My background is in integrated engineering, and I also am trained as a birth doula and have worked directly with families through their pregnancies. My team has led hardware development at companies like Sanctuary AI, conducted PhD research in biomedical sensors, and have numerous publications across medical imaging. And our mentors have taken medical devices to market and companies to IPO. As an example, Liz Monroe, who's one of our key mentors, was the former co-founder of Perimeter Medical Imaging. We're also receiving great product development support, such as through Jack Pryor, who was an early engineer at Dex, which is one of the most prominent glucose monitoring technologies. And we are also receiving clinical mentorship through physician leaders such as Dr. William Fraser, who is the former Canada Research Chair in Maternal and Fetal Medicine, as well as Dr. Niraj Mistry, who is a neonatologist at Toronto Sick Kids. So we will be raising $2 million to complete our clinical trials and get to our FDA submissions. This will also allow us to lock down our product and start developing our pre-production units. And this will be achieved within 24 months. And the goal is to start our Series A in the 2nd quarter of 2026. We've already seen that companies within this space have been able to do very well. So both Owlet and Nuvo went public. Nuvo went public actually just this past July. And we've also seen major acquisitions such as from Samsung, which recently acquired a fetal ultrasound technology. Little Judas' legacy lives on, and we believe that there is hope. As just an example, last year, Nadine and I worked together to successfully advocate for new national fetal health surveillance guidelines. So now in Canada, after 26 weeks, every family should be advised to regularly monitor their fetal movements in their 3rd trimester. And this is also moving away over some technology is really enabling people to do this much more easily. Pregnancy is a reminder.
I was there for a second, Dolma.
Oh, I froze. Sorry, I'm not sure how much of that you heard.
We heard the first bit on this, but not the rest of it.
Okay, yeah, no worries. So yeah, we helped change national fetal health surveillance guidelines. So now in Canada, after 26 weeks, parents are to be regularly monitoring fetal movements. And if they notice any change or a decrease, they're to seek medical attention right away. And there was previously a guideline of 6 movements in 2 hours, but they've actually removed this now. So we're moving towards this understanding that it's about your baby's unique baseline, and that there isn't a one guideline that can be applied to each person. And so our technology is helping families to understand what their baby's unique baseline is. And we believe that pregnancy is a reminder of what a miracle it is to be human. And so from the very first flutters in your belly to the first time that you're holding your baby, we want every family to have a positive experience. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dolma. And you came in just under 12 minutes, even with having to repeat a slide. So well done. And we will start with Melanie.
Sorry, I was looking up, do the founders have access to like the judging rubric that we were sent to that we're going to be using to judge them in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we send them the rubric in advance.
They sent them? Okay. So I've seen your presentation before, Dolma. And it does actually seem like it has changed a fair bit from last time you did it. One thing I was finding is that it became a little bit hard to follow because the titles of your slides didn't hit a lot of the traditional titles that we see in pitches. So often your title would be information that is often presented lower down, and then you would either say, or it would be in much smaller type, what exactly like you were talking about there. And I'm trying to find an example of what I'm talking about. Like you had one that was kind of titled hardware traction, but then you started talking about like IP and regulatory stuff in there. And same with some other ones. I've actually been thinking about your product a lot, because initially it was like, okay, it's like a manual kit counter, but then you have a medical device that you're developing. And I was like, okay, how much do we need this medical device? And I've come around to the thinking of, you know what, this should probably be standard of care. Like, do we live in a world where eventually this will be standard of care? And every pregnancy, once you get past a certain number of weeks, we'll be able to monitor every single pregnancy. And, I have an Apple Watch and I can monitor my heart rate all the time. I can monitor my sleep. The watches now monitor O2 saturation. They're going to get to the point where they can do continuous glucose monitoring. So this idea that we'll have devices on our body where we can monitor things 24/7 is becoming much more common and much more accepted. And this product, which initially I was actually a little bit skeptical about, I've completely come around to thinking, no, in the science fiction future that I think about and that I read about, and the world that I want my daughters to live in, this is actually standard of care. And this is like kind of the minimum that we should expect technology to do for us, because kind of what's more important than having baby, than the health of our infants. And so I think, I don't know if that's something to put into the presentation, this idea of like, no, this I don't think this is just for those high risk pregnancies. Like that's kind of a beachhead market, but like how cheap can you make this? And how many people can you sell it to? Because $2,000 is pretty expensive. And so do you want to be the $2,000 product out there that only rich people or hospitals are buying? Or are you going to be the company that brings this to the market for $200 and everyone is going to buy? And whether that's outside of the pitch at this point. This is more related to like your the future of your business. But I think that, yeah, I've completely come over to this idea that this is actually kind of important and just kind of like the minimum acceptable, like what we as women should demand when we're pregnant is we should, this is what we should have.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I like that point a lot. And I think even it's worth like maybe even just having one slide of like we're targeting high risk pregnancies as our initial into the market, but our goal is to like reduce the cost of these and make them like accessible to all. Like even saying that, like in my mind, it like makes the market huger, like way more big. I said that wrong both ways, but you know what I mean? You know what I mean? But then also a really great point about just like a new standard of care. Like we're trying to be the new standard of care for women in their third trimester. Like that statement alone says a lot about like the direction of where the company's going and it being a lot like a bigger solution beyond just like, oh, you wear it for your 3 months of pregnancy. Like it feels bigger when you talk about it that way. Okay, a few other comments and questions. So when you were talking about the $9,000 like for a stillbirth, is that on top of like the typical $18,000 per pregnancy, or is like, yeah,
Yes,
no,
that's correct. Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was like different, if it was like less for a stillbirth. So maybe just like in addition to the already existing. That was one comment. You had a bunch of dots on your competitive landscape slide, and I didn't understand what they meant. It was like red, gray, and
yes.
star. If those are important, might be worth like explaining what they're there for. I only saw the legend for the star, so I wasn't sure what the dots were referring to.
Maybe it didn't show up. Yeah, so it's just one dot was like measures fetal movement, one dot was measures heart rate, and so we were trying to show which ones are only doing heart rate or
okay, you know, it might have, I had the slide zoomed in on my screen so I could see better, so it might have just on the bottom. Another one, you had TRL7 written somewhere on the slide. Like maybe just explaining what that means. Like I assume it meant it's somewhere along the journey of like a hard tech ware being accepted, but for like non very like deep hardware tech investors, they might not know that, like myself included. So that might just be worth like explaining that. I liked the regulatory timeline slide. I thought that gave a good, like, honest view of where the product is, where we're going. So I feel like that one was an addition since your last one. In the clinical site slide, you were showing like a US and a Canada clinical site. Maybe just throw the flags on. Like, I feel like as much visuals as you can throw in, like US flag, Canada flag, just because then I'm like, oh, okay, they have both countries. They're going both. And then also just I was at the Femtech breakfast pitch in Vancouver. So congratulations on your win there. And I even saw like, so I've seen the pitch like 3 weeks in a row now, and it's like gradually changed each week. So yeah, great job.
Thank you.
Great, thanks both of you. And I have not seen the pitch 3 weeks in a row, so coming into it a bit fresh. I had some of the same comments. I thought it was a great pitch. I thought, the story at the beginning, the human cost of stillbirth, not just the financial cost of stillbirth, was pretty clear. I did have the same comments as the others on driving the cost down, so that you can tackle stillbirths everywhere. Especially because they're, I don't have the Canadian data, but in the US, it's much higher in the poorer communities who don't have the same access to care. So I know your app can address that to a certain extent at your, whatever it was, $5.99 a month price point, but the wearable device for the higher risk pregnancies. You'd said that, your initial wearable was still going to be B2C. Would it make sense to be going through obstetricians on that? So that, when they identify a high risk pregnancy, they are providing the monitor. And I also had a question on the reuse of the monitor. Is it, when you're designing your wearables, is it going to be integrated in with the underwear? Or is it like a strap that can be reused? So, at the end of the pregnancy, I return it, it can be used by someone else. Because that would also make the cost well, it would change your business model, but it would also change the cost model if it was reusable. So just thinking about how you're,
Mhm.
you know, if your vision is to reduce by 30% stillbirths worldwide, there's a lot of things that have to happen from a cost. And it also makes sense in that to look at it from a manufacturing perspective. Manufacturing, you know, you can do 1,000 at $2,000 a piece, but when you're up doing hundreds of thousands of these, you can bring it down to, you know, whatever that price point is, so that as you scale in volume, your pricing comes down and you can attack more and more of the market, and save more babies' lives.
Yeah, I would say like the pricing part has been something that I've been struggling with, because I do also see it in phases, but I've been noticing that I've been getting a lot of feedback around it being too high, and like if we're trying to, you know, increase the access. But yeah, so I've been thinking about it as like, okay, initially we'll go in as $2,000, but then there will be ways to like reduce that cost. So like maybe I just need to be able to convey how we're thinking about that like longer term strategy. Because otherwise, yeah, it comes as sort of a
Yeah,
shock.
because your mission is probably to reduce this for everybody, right?
Mhm.
In
Yes.
which case you have to have a business model that can get to everybody.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not to say that initially you can, because when you're manufacturing 100 or 1,000, you're going to be doing it at a much higher cost. But what is your plan to get to low cost manufacturing? You know, for higher volumes and more people, and that reuse aspect of it. If it's a band,
Mhm.
it might be more reusable than if it's underwear. So things like that.
It's currently actually a band.
Okay, the picture was underwear, so. Because in the picture was underwear, and you said, you know, in putting it in clothing that people wear. So I assume it's the underwear, but if it is a band, that just might be, you know, so it's the other one was a band, yours is a band, but yours is a band that's discreet. Theirs is a band that's big and chunky, and I'm probably only going to put it on for a few minutes a day rather than wear it all the time. The other one.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, so that was my main feedback. I thought it was a good presentation. Well done. Any other comments, Melanie and Michelle? No? All right, great job, Dolma.
Awesome. Thank you
And
so much.
have a wonderful weekend, everybody.
Nice job. Happy Friday, everyone. Talk soon.
Bye.